Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm giving you our week 6 fantasy football waiver wire pickups. We're here to help you make all the right decisions on who you should pick up off that waiver wire and add to your roster so that you can win this week and who you should avoid as well. Let's start this fantasy football podcast right now. Hey guys, I'm Kyle, and this is the Fantasy Football Upside. Thanks for dropping by our Fantasy Football Podcast and YouTube channel. Week 6 is upon us here. Some of you might still have a Week 5 game hanging around here for a little while. We're just over a quarter of a way through the fantasy football season in 2020, and it looks like we're still going to have a season for a little while longer. I'm hoping that it keeps going. I don't know what's going to happen here. But today we're going to talk about who you should be adding off of the waiver wire so that you can make sure that your team is ready to go in week 6, assuming that nothing changes, obviously, right? I think waiver wire play is becoming even more and more important because you got to have all those backups to cover yourself in case a game goes down like it is this week, or this last week rather. All right, so the waiver wires guys that we're going to be talking about as a general rule are going to have 60% or less rostering on Yahoo leagues. That's just a benchmark that we're using, a high water point as a general rule. All right, so make sure that you hit subscribe as well as click that bell so that you're notified every time we upload the podcast. Justin should be back tomorrow, and we'll get right into week 6's Thursday night football game. All right, guys, make sure you also comment with your start sit questions. We did miss one this week. We didn't catch it. It was posted on Sunday morning. We apologize. We didn't get to help you out with that one before the games started, but we'll try to stay on top of it next time. There's only one, I think, that we've missed so far this year. All right, so let's dive in headfirst into the shallow end, and let's start talking about our waiver wire pickups. All right, I'm going to stick with running backs off the top here, guys. We've got 2 of them here. We've got Alexander Mattison, which is probably the top running back or top ad in general this week, and that is because Dalvin Cook went down with an injury. We're not sure the nature of that injury just yet. He did have an MRI on Monday. That is, I guess it went well, is what Mike Zimmer has said, and they said that they're going to see how he performs this week during practice. So it does sound like Dalvin Cook is going to get some play time potentially. I'm not sure that they're going to want to run him out there too much. So I think that Alexander Mattison, even in a situation where Dalvin Cook does still get to play, I think Alexander Mattison, at least for 1 week, is going to outsnap him. And if Cook misses an extended period of time, Alexander Mattison is going to be a great pickup to have. He definitely carried that backfield after Cook went out of the game. He had the clear lead in touches. And look, even if Cook only misses one game or misses only like split in carries here, Alexander Mattison is still worth an add. I've seen it suggested that he should be around 50% of your budget on a fab budget, which is redundant, right? Fab is already got the word budget into it. All right. So I would say still add him. I'm not recommending 50% because I think that based on the news from Monday, I think there's clear indication that Cook is going to play. If not this first week, he will be back, I think, relatively soon. But I would imagine he'll still get some carries this week. Justin Jackson is the next one that I've got on my list here. He's rostered presently at 44%. He got 15 carries and 71 yards in week 5. And I don't think a share of this backfield is a terrible thing at this point. And at a minimum, I think it provides you some sort of depth at the running back position. His carry total, that's pretty good for a split backfield. That's pretty good for modern NFL standards. Obviously, this isn't Dalvin Cook, right? You're not going to get 20 plus carries. This isn't Zeke. And even Zeke's been dialed back a bit. But Justin Jackson getting 15 carries is a pretty solid number. Miles Sanders was drafted with even fewer carries on average than that. So I think Justin Jackson is someone worth adding. That offense is clicking. It's moving. The defense is not as good as you would hope. But he's incorporated in both the passing and the running game. So I think that he's not going to be game scripted out. I wouldn't say he's game script proof, but I would say that he's just not going to be game scripted out on you, and that you can probably rely on him getting somewhere between 12 and 16 carries a game going forward. That's a pretty solid number. He turned in 71 yards in week 5. That's not terrible. Could be a little bit better on 15 carries, but hey, once you get him going, he might start rocking and rolling out there. All right, let's move on here to wide receiver. I've got several wide receivers for you this week. This is one of the positions that just is a boom or bust position usually. And so we're looking for guys who are on the upswing who might start getting some consistent level of output. Number one right off the top is one of the hot waiver ads of the week, and that's going to be Chase Claypool. He's only 17% rostered right now. He had 11 targets in that offense, 7 catches, 110 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Obviously, it's not rocket science to go ahead and predict a regression on the touchdowns going forward this next week. But I think that you could reasonably rely on him to average somewhere in the neighborhood of north of 5 targets per week at least. Don't forget he's still a rookie, so whether or not he's fully incorporated into this offense, I'm not sure that he's there just yet. I think this is partially because Deontay Johnson just can't seem to stay healthy. And so as long as Deontay Johnson is kind of banged up, and we really like Deontay Johnson, as long as he's kind of banged up, I think Chase Claypool takes a little bit more of that offensive pass game, taking a bigger share of that. I think Juju still gets the work done as well. But I think that Chase is one of those guys that, look, if you're in a dynasty or a keeper, it's somebody that you should really have rostered if you can grab him. 17% is really low. Let's go with a lower number here, right? That's Travis Fulgham. He got 13 targets, 10 catches, 152 yards, and 1 touchdown. Sorry about that. Bang the mic. You got to be a little cautious here, okay? First of all, it's the Eagles. That offense has been so spotty. It's very difficult to predict any sort of consistency out of any of those players. Greg Ward has been the only wide receiver on that team that has stayed healthy this year. Travis Fulgham stepped in and obviously performed really well. But why did he step in? He stepped in because several starters were out. You've got Deshaun Jackson gone. You've got Alshon Jeffrey gone. You've got Jalen Reagor gone. All of those guys are set to come back over the course of the next few weeks. I would expect Travis Fulgham's role to diminish over time, and I'm not so sure that he's carved out enough space for himself to stay there long term. If there's anybody who's going to get bumped from there, I think it's probably Alshon Jeffrey, but he's a great possession receiver, somebody who's over the middle. And Fulgham's probably competing more likely with Reagor or Deshaun Jackson. And neither of those guys are going to lose the battle to Fulgham at this point. I mean, he hasn't taken to the job at any point until they got hurt. The next guy that I'm going to move on to here is Tim Patrick. He's out in Denver. He's only 17% rostered right now. I've mentioned him, I believe, last week as well. This is someone that I think has the potential to actually be a solid starter for you going forward. I would peg him in the neighborhood of a wide receiver 3 or flex play as sort of, I wouldn't say a floor, but as what you would hope for consistently coming out of him. This coming week, he faces New England, and he's had several weeks of good targets. He's got, well, you know what? I think that maybe that New England game was moved. I'd have to double check. Week 4, he was targeted 7 times, had 6 catches, 113 yards, and a touchdown. He's got back-to-back weeks with touchdowns. He's definitely getting incorporated into this offense a whole lot more as Brett Rypien remains the QB. So you have to keep an eye on what's going on with the QB. I think that with Brett Rypien, Tim Patrick is the wide receiver 2 on that team at least. He is getting a ton of targets. It's growing. He could be a long-term asset. I'm not sure. Just keep an eye on it. He's only 17% rostered. If you do have a space on your bench, or if your rosters have been expanded somehow, he's somebody worth considering. All right. So an old name here, well, not such an old name, I suppose, is Mike Williams, but that's definitely somebody that you've heard of. He's 40% rostered right now. So it's a little bit on the higher end of ones that I'm talking about, but Keenan Allen left the game. Not really sure what's wrong right now. Obviously, there's no news yet, but they were working on his back on the sideline. It looks like he had at least tightness in his back, but when the game was on the line and they're in overtime, or they're at the end of the game driving for that field goal that doinked off the post, and don't get me started on that one. I had a little money on that going, lost out on that because of that doink. But Mike Williams was the guy they went to, and Keenan Allen was still standing on the sideline. So if Keenan Allen were a little just banged up and they were worried about him just not being 100%, but still okay to go, they would have had him out there with the game on the line, and they just didn't bring him out there. Instead, he was standing on the sideline, didn't appear to have his helmet. It didn't appear like he was going to go in anytime soon. So I'd say Mike Williams is a good guy to target right now. I think that he's already got a piece of this offense, a piece of this passing game, and I think he could get even more here while Keenan Allen might miss time. So is somebody worth considering rostering? This team is passing a whole lot more, and you have to pay attention to the fact that Eckler being gone, they are going to Herbert's arm a whole lot more. Williams blew up for 8 targets, 5 catches, 109 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And he was absolutely dominant over the top. He just blew right by a few defenders. Now, there were mistakes by the defense in that game that allowed him to get over top, but there were moments that he just straight up bodied a defensive player, went over top of him, and competed for that ball. He is a big guy, and he gets up to the top for the point of the catch and just beats the defender to the ball. All right, let's move on here. Tight end. I've only got one name for you this week, guys. Tight end is a little thin. It's been a crapshoot this year. Tight end has not been something that you can consistently rely on. And it's not really matchup based. It's just been so unreliable this year. Passing games have been so inconsistent. But the name I've got for you is Irv Smith Jr. He's in Minnesota. He's 6% rostered. He got 5 targets, 4 catches, and 64 yards. Nothing spectacular, but 64 yards is pretty solid. This offense doesn't have a whole lot of weapons in it. And with Cook potentially missing time, the tight end could be incorporated more heavily into the running game or into the play action game. So I would say that Irv Smith is somebody worth considering. I'm not going to go out and pay a whole lot for him. Again, tight end's so inconsistent. It's very, very, very difficult to anticipate what he may or may not do. He's someone who is decently talented, and you could consider rostering. All right, let's finish up here with a couple QBs. We don't always grab or throw waiver QBs out here for you, but I've got a couple names for you that I think are worth considering. These are a little bit more on the streamer side of things than they are like long-term holds. So these are guys that shouldn't spend a ton on unless you absolutely need to, or you consider that you might have a bye. And with the way that the season's going, teams randomly ending up on a bye toward the end of the week and not being able to anticipate that at the time that waivers are running, it might be the type of year where you got to carry more than one QB, which we do not like doing, but it might be worthwhile to do that so that you don't miss out on a solid start for that week, and you have that held. Maybe you carry 2 QBs and that second QB is just a streaming QB for that week, and that you just rotate that roster spot as a backup who's a streamer for that week, who's a backup to your main guy, just in case your main guy goes down with a COVID bye. All right, so the 2 names I've got for you are Andy Dalton. He's 3% rostered. You probably already have that name on your list because Dak went down. And if you saw it, it's really unfortunate. We were really high on Dak this year coming in, and he's performed very, very well. He had up to that point. It's an unfortunate freak accident. It's going to be a very long recovery, I imagine. Now, for somebody who's got all kinds of resources at his disposal and every motivation possible to actually rehab appropriately and focus on his rehab and come back from this injury, Dak's going to do that, I think. I think he's really got all the motivation to get that done. But in the interim, Andy Dalton should carry a good amount of value. He should carry enough value to be rostered. I'm not sure that he's somebody you want to start on a weekly basis. I think that this throws into disarray the value of the wide receivers at this point. We don't know who Dalton has built up any rapport with. If he has built up rapport with anyone, I would have to run through and double check the targeting totals to see what happened after Dak was out of the game and Dalton was the one running the offense. Who was he targeting? He has the nickname, the Red Rifle. I don't know if he's still got the gun anymore, but if he can get the ball down the field, they've got plenty of targets. They've got an offensive scheme that will focus on the pass game. I would imagine that Zeke's value goes up a tad bit because I think that they're going to try to rely on a consistent value in that offense that they know can continue to provide points for them and hopefully get wins, I guess. So they barely eked that one out after Dak went down. All right, the last guy I've got for you here is Ryan Fitzpatrick. Good old Fitzmagic, right? He's 21% rostered right now. And yeah, I understand it's Fitzpatrick and he can be a little bit inconsistent, right? But he blew up against the Niners, which is a decently solid defense. They're not what they were last year. They are definitely weaker than they were last year, but and they were without Richard Sherman as well. So that does reduce the back end of that defense a little bit, but he threw for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. You can't ignore that. I mean, this is the same thing that Fitzpatrick has done for a long time. He just blows up for multiple touchdown games in a row. And right now, what you have to look at is his schedule is set up to do that very thing. There's not much of a run game coming out of Miami right now. Everybody's talking about Myles Gaskin, and he's just hit or miss, in my opinion. That offensive line is not built to run behind necessarily. And so I think that they're just going to throw more and more over the next few weeks. So double check his schedule and you will see that he's got great matchups coming. And so if you are looking for a guy to hold on to as a streamer, to hold on to as a backup, just in case something occurs where you get a late in the week buy announcement, I think Fitzpatrick is a great pickup there. And I also think that Andy Dalton is as well. So in my opinion right now, strategically, I think that everybody kind of needs to pivot. The fact that they're starting to move games out of the week very, very easily and more often, and I think we're going to see some more and more creative solutions that incorporate that move. I think you have to be prepared for that possibility. And to do that, you need to, one, pay attention to what's going on with the testing and the results and what teams are getting positives. And two, you need to have a backup QB. Tight end has been so hit and miss. I would not rely on a backup tight end on my roster necessarily. I think I would carry one, maybe carry two, but I think that right now you have to really seriously consider carrying 2 QBs and at a minimum rotating one of them out as a streamer every week. So you might have a lot of activity on your waiver wire for a QB, but I think that you really have to focus on, okay, who's got the best matchup in case my guy is not able to play this week. It's not a strategy that we would usually advise, but in this season, the way things are playing out, I think that is the rational and the protected way of approaching your season. So that'll do it. Do it for tonight, guys. And we'll be back tomorrow with Justin and the Thursday night football game. And I think we're just going to cover the Thursday night football game. I think we're going to split out all the other information that we've been talking about. I'm going to go ahead and toss the waiver wire episode from last week on the screen so you can double check that one and see if there's any names that are still hanging around your waiver wire that are worth considering. Make sure you hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you are notified every time that we upload the best fantasy football podcast on the internet. We will see you guys next time. Thanks for being fans of the upside. Bye.